Morning. Good to see all of you today. Okay. So I'm going to jump right in. We're going to try to keep it to 30 minutes today. Okay. We'll see how it goes. So Dongshan Ling Ji was a Chan Buddhist monk of the Tang Dynasty. He founded the Kaodong school, which was transmitted to Japan in the 13th century and developed into the Soto school of Zen. Dongshan is also the attributed author of the teaching poem Song of the Jewel, Mere Awareness. Notice I said attributed author. I'm not going to go into that, but there's some back history behind that apparently. So the first story in Dongshan's recorded sayings describe him receiving a basic Buddhist lesson as a child. Reading the Heart Sutra with his tutor, he came to, there is no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. He immediately felt his face and said, I have ears, I have eyes, I have a nose, I have a tongue, and so on. So why does the sutra say they don't exist? Very astute. I think, I just picture a young child hearing the sutra, no eyes, no ears, no tongue, no body, no mind, and then being like, what am I hearing? I have eyes, I have a nose, I have ears. And so there's clearly a discrepancy between what his experience is and what he's hearing, right? And so this sort of discrepancy piqued his curiosity as a young child. And so this discrepancy sort of piqued his curiosity. And I would say at that point, this was Bodhi mind, which refers to the awakened mind or the aspiration toward enlightenment. And so just sort of a little discrepancy that he heard there sort of piqued his curiosity or his interest or maybe his desire to awakening. Maybe that's going too far, but something was sparked at that moment in time when he heard that sutra. And I know for me, and I'm sure each of us here has something similar where there was a spark where just a little interest in what's going on. What is going on in reality, what's going on with the nature of reality, and then furthermore, what's going on with these teachings. These teachings are difficult in the sense that they're counter. They're counter to our ordinary view of things. And so there's repetition that we often hear in these teachings. The Heart Sutra, we chant this regularly, and it's helpful to hear these teachings regularly in repetition. I know for a long time, I would hear Dharma teachings and I didn't quite understand what was being said or pointed to. And the repetition, I noticed the teachers would often say the same things over and over and over again. The most common one that I found myself doing is that relative reality is bad. I would hear that in the teachings. I would hear things pointed out, and I certainly got the impression that the world of this and that, or everyday world, the relative world, somehow seemed like a bad thing, but our teachers pointed out over and over and over again, that's not what is being pointed out. That's not explicitly what I'm saying. I've never said, and obviously this isn't me talking, but a teacher, I've never said that relative is bad, And it took me several years to actually hear that and understand what that was pointing to, that we can't negate the relative world. And that isn't the purpose. But it can certainly seem that way, we can kind of like take it in that way, and that can be our understanding, but it's a misunderstanding. So from a young age, it seems that Dongshan was expressing some sort of insight or understanding, not just based on this one story, but there's a couple different stories that I won't go into today. I've been reading Just This Is It by Tag and Dan Layton, preparing for an upcoming class here in January. So I've gotten, some familiarity with Dongshan. Um, So Dongshan had a teacher named Yun Yan. Dongshan asked Yun Yan, this is well into their teacher-student relationship, and he said, later on, if I am asked to describe your reality or your teaching, how should I respond? And after some pause, Yun Yan said, just this is it, which is the title of the book. So a very pivotal moment or teaching for Dongshan to hear his teachers say that. Just this is it, very simple, very profound, I would say, very important teaching. Dongshan was then lost in thought. Just this is it. What is that? What's he exactly referring to? And Yun Yan said, you are now in charge of this great matter. You must be thoroughgoing. Dongshan departed without further comment. Later, while wading across the stream, he looked down, saw his reflection, and awakened to the meaning of the previous exchange. And then he wrote the following verse. Just don't seek from others, or you'll be far estranged from self. I now go on alone everywhere I meet it. It now is me. I now am not it. One must understand in this way to merge with suchness. I think I already talked on that verse before, so I'm actually, that isn't the point of today's talk, is to go into that in detail. But I just wanted to provide some context for what's going to follow here. So the Book of Serenity, case 49. A monk came forward and asked, when Yun Yan said, just this is it, what did he mean? Dongshan responded, at that time I nearly misunderstood my teacher. The monk then asked, somewhat impudently, did Yun Yan himself know it is or not? Dongshan said, if he didn't know it is, how could he be able to say this? And if he did know it is, how could he be willing to say this? So the only two sections sentences, or I don't know, I forget what you call them, sections of that passage that I just read, that I'm gonna highlight here is when Dongshan said, if he didn't know it is, how could he be able to say this? And so clearly, in order to have said it, he must have seen it. And not just by repeating things that he had heard. This, and we'll get into, this is actually what this talk is going to be about, which is we'll go into in a little bit, but it's that moment when there's a clear expression of these teachings, a moment between the teacher and the student. That's a pivotal moment where it's clear that this is, what's being expressed. It's an expression of reality and not just repeating what he's heard. And if he did not know, and if he did know it is, how could he be willing to say this? So if he sees this, he can express this. How could he be willing to say this? And this is expressing the problem of stating it directly. And so these teachings, they're never handing us something to hold on to, but they're pointers. And it can never be stated directly because reality can't be packaged into a concept, which we can then grab onto and then understand through a conceptual understanding what this is. But nevertheless, teachers teach, and they say things, they use concepts and words. But there's a problem because they can't ever state it directly, but they can point. And of course, this brings up, which we've heard Steve Hagen refer to a lot, which is an interaction between his teacher and him, which is, he was, how can I say anything about this? How can I say anything about reality? I can't put this into words, actually, and how can we even talk about this? And his teacher said, if you don't say anything, nobody will understand, right? And so teachers teach, but they don't hand us something. So Hongzi, who is the author of the Book of Serenity, which is a collection of koans, offered a provocative verse commentary to case 49 in the Book of Serenity. And this is where it gets interesting, and this is what I actually wanted to, all that was kind of backdrop of the commentary that I wanted to focus on today. And so how could he be able to say this? In the third watch, the cock crows, dawn for the forest of homes. How could he be willing to say this? The thousand-year crane grows old with the pine and the clouds. The jewel mirror, clear and bright, shows upright and inclined. The jade works spin. See them both show up together. The way of the school is greatly influential, its regulated steps continuous and fine. Father and son change and pass through, oceanic is their fame. So the thousand-year crane grows old with the pine and the clouds. Cranes are an ancient Chinese symbol of wisdom and longevity. Dongshan's legacy and teachings have indeed weathered a millennium and studied by monks and practitioners. So here's the part where it gets pretty interesting. The jewel mirror, clear and bright, shows upright and inclined. And it's this where I just thought was really fascinating, and I kind of wanted to bring out to you. So the jewel mirror evokes the song of jewel mirror awareness and Dongshan's expressed insight. And the passage from the song of the jewel mirror awareness that they're referring to, or that's being brought out here, is it is like facing a jewel mirror. Form and image behold each other. You are not it. It actually is you. And so this upright is referring to absolute or ultimate. So absolute ultimate is being expressed here as upright. And I don't know who here was present for Shokin's last talk, but I found it very helpful. I just really appreciate the way he expresses these teachings. And he talked about his first experience with upright sitting. He described sitting upright, and he was going through some turbulence in his life at that point. I don't recall exactly what it was. I kind of remember, but I don't want to really go into that because that's his story. But he was experiencing difficulties, and he felt like the bottom kind of dropped out of his life at that point. And he was clearly experiencing some emotional upheaval in his life at that point. And the way he described sitting and sitting upright was very familiar. It's sitting upright instead of running away, because that's our typical way of doing things. Is we encounter some difficulty and immediately we want to run. Not physically necessarily, but we want to find something to comfort. We want to find some relief from the difficulties that we're experiencing, and we turn away. We try to turn away from the difficulties. And Shokin described sitting upright as being the first time he just sat with what he was experiencing, sitting right in the middle of the difficulty. And it was that upright sitting that for the first time he experienced feeling, I don't know if feeling's the right word for it, but relief or not being taken in by the thoughts, the emotions, the experiences that he was having. And it's interesting because it wasn't running from, it was turning towards and sitting upright just in the middle of what is. And I've certainly had a similar experience, and I won't go into too much detail here, but I had a very difficult breakup several years back now. In hindsight, I guess not that big of a deal. Breakups happen, but at the time it was very, this is a very difficult thing to go through. And we were gonna sit Rohatsu 5 days sesshin, and it happened just before sesshin. And so that was very difficult. And I was nervous going into it, like, how can I sit for 5 days with all of this pain? And I sat and much like Shokin, the experience of sitting upright and being with what is, and the images, the internal dialogue, that's where a lot of the difficulty arises from, and being caught by that, being caught by delusion. And so just sitting upright with what is, whatever is happening, the thinking comes and goes, it arises and passes away. None of that is permanent, and it's just sitting with reality as it is. Very, very influential. And of course, this is Dogen's practice enlightenment. Dogen does not differentiate practice from enlightenment. Upright sitting is awakening. Just being with what is, and not solidifying anything, and just seeing impermanence. So it's interesting that in this commentary by Hong Zi, it's upright and inclined. So again, the upright is like the absolute or ultimate. The inclined is the relative, which I thought inclined was an interesting choice of word here, because we, in the teachings here at Dharma Field, talk about a leaning mind. Watch your leaning mind. And so it isn't necessarily the same thing here. The inclined is the relative. We can get caught by the relative. And so we watch our leaning mind and watch when we're leaning toward this or away from that. And in doing that and just being aware, we're not caught. We're not caught by the inclined. So the jade work spin, see them both show up together or not separate. I had to do some research on this because I wasn't familiar with the phrase working jade, which apparently is a thing. Jade refers to a variety of stones. The process of working jade involves cutting, abrading, and polishing a stone. Jade working in China spans over 6,000 years. This is it's I don't know what to say. It's an old practice. So this is the dynamic interaction of relative and absolute, or ultimate and conventional, the jade work spin. So the highly complex Chinese character translated here as works by Tag and Dan Layton, and by Cleary as machine, connotes energy, opportunity, function, capacity, occasion, a mechanism, a loom, or even the moving power of the universe. So again, I'm going to repeat this section that we're going through here. The jade work spin, see them both show up together. So that seems to be worded pretty good to me. But when I was preparing this, it seemed that some common pitfalls that we typically encounter is that we solidify an agent that moves the jade, So it's a mover or like an agent that initiates the movement that is working the jade. And so we always posit something in the picture that is the initiator of the movement. And so naturally, I guess, according to, practice here and that, I thought of Nagarjuna, Mulamajamaka Karika. And this is the examination of agent and action. I'm not going to go into this in depth by any means. That's not the purpose here. But it's our solidification of an action and an agent that initiates the action. So here's a verse from the Mulamajamaka Karika. This existent agent does not perform an existent action, nor does some non-existent agent perform some non-existent action. Nagarjuna here announces that with respect to agency and action as well, he will steer a middle course between inherent existence and complete non-existence. Neither action nor agent will come out to be an inherently existing entity, nor will either end up being completely non-existent. And so this is the middle path. And so when we solidify in our minds like an agent that initiates an action, just realizing that's being caught. When we look at that, we can't pinpoint anything that is the agent, and we actually can't pinpoint anything solidified as an action. And the other one I thought of here is Nagarjuna's examination of motion. Neither in an entity nor non-entity move in any of the three ways, which are past, present, and future. And so basically, Nagarjuna is just saying there isn't past motion, there's not present motion, there's not future motion. And so that's the way he sort of examines motion. So motion, mover, and route are not evident. All phenomena, including motion, are dependently arisen and hence empty of inherent existence. The conclusion that motion is empty is simply the conclusion that it is conventional and dependent, like the putatively moving entities themselves. And so they're empty. So the motion is empty, agent and action, empty, By the way, putatively is something that is generally accepted or supposed to be true. I didn't realize that when I was reading this, but may not actually be proven. Certainly hope I'm not losing you guys with this Nagarjuna stuff. The point here is that when we solidify, when we believe there is something substantial, we're off the mark. And so that's not what's being pointed out here in this line. And again, the Jade work spin, see them both show up together. I'm going to read from Kalupahana because the translation that I used so far is Garfield, and I think Kalupahana actually says something pretty profound about this. So with regard to the examination of motion, the conclusion is very specifically stated in these two verses. It is not in any kind of mover or movement that is rejected as being impossible. It is the really or substantially or independently existent mover or movement that is rejected. This is a criticism of eternalism or substantiality. And so when we solidify, make things substantial, just realize that's off the mark. That's not what's being pointed out here. So we don't deny the appearances, certainly appears to be coming and going. Looks like coming, looks like going, looks like moving, looks like the cessation of moving. It appears that way. And this is consciousness. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I got 4 minutes. So the jewel mirror samadhi includes the character for works in the line. The meaning does not reside in the words, but a pivotal moment brings it forth. So the meaning is not in words. So the meaning is not in the words themselves. Actually, I'm going to quote the Dharma Field translation here. So that's from the book that I was reading, just This Is It, but on our Dharma Field translation, it says, meaning is not in the words, yet it yields to the inquiring spirit. So words are not ultimate truth, they're pointers. In the Dharma Field translation, the inquiring spirit, this sort of, and I think Steve Matushak might have talked about this before a while back, but this inquiring spirit, it's Bodhi mind, the intention to be awake, this inquiring spirit that is interacting, I suppose, with the words that are being spoken. So it's Dharma teachings, Dharma teachers say things, they point to the teachings, but it's also us that are showing up with, I suppose, Bodhi mind. And that's the pivotal moment, can we hear what's being pointed out in the teachings? So the pivotal moment is literally the arrival of this working capacity, function, opportunity, or mechanism arising immediately in response to the student's intent inquiry. This indeed is a working pivot, turning with energy, curiosity, and potential. Hangzi's point is that this pivot is working in Dangshan's utterances, it now is me, I now am not it. And if he did know it is, how could he be willing to say this? Thanks to the pivot of the Jade, Hangzi proclaims, both upright and inclined, the universal and its particular phenomenal expressions show up together and immediately. Dharma teachings are reality with a capital R expressing itself. Reality isn't in the words or the action, but the words and actions are reality with a capital R. There's nothing substantial in the words of the action. It's just reality showing up as reality. By the way, I'm right on cue here, 10:29. One thing I forgot to mention earlier in the pitfalls that we commonly is that we view relative and absolute as separate, and never are the teachings pointing to that or saying that. But our teachers have to say something. And so we talk about relative and absolute as they're two different concepts, I suppose, but they're not separate, but we have to say something. We have to point to this, or nobody will understand. But very helpful teaching, the two truths, relative and absolute, or conventional and ultimate, as I've heard it described before. I tried to pinpoint the difference between absolute and ultimate, and I was just advised to not think about it too much. All right, it's 10:30. Okay. Any comments or questions? I know. Yeah.
Hi, Beau. Thanks for your talk. Could you go back to that line about, I don't remember it exactly, but the Jade works function, or do you know the one I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So the Jade works spin, see them both show up together.
And I'm not familiar with this, but is Jade works, is that sort of a combination word that is and think about Jade being a noun and works being a verb, but it sounds like that's not what that's getting at, that Jade works is I'm just not sure. I'm trying to think about what it seems like this is pointing to something, but I am having a hard time seeing what Jade works, what we're talking about there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And this is exactly the point where it's piqued my curiosity, because I think it's worded in a way that's actually pretty helpful when it comes to these teachings. So what they in China, apparently, in my research, they call this working jade, or the jade works, you know. And so it's like when we try, this is a translation, first of all. And when we try to solidify what it is that's working the jade, or the jade works, you know,
Okay.
it sort of it kind of messes with our ideas about what that is, because we want an action and an agent that performs that. And so
Okay.
yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That's very helpful. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it says, see them both show up together, and so the jade works as both the upright and the inclined, relative and absolute, showing up together. They were never separate, but we have to talk about this in a way, hopefully, that's helpful. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Resonates, thanks. I just gave the practice period talk earlier this morning on acts or gifts of kindness, compassion, service. And we've got many, in the history and traditions of Zen, we've got many fingers pointing at the moon of saying no gift, no giver, no recipient, no act. I keep coming back to the idea of just. In Zazen, we don't teach breathe, an active verb, we teach breath, which is just all inclusive of the act, the action, the actor, and those that are acted on. Just bring it back to just. I've always found just bringing it back to that and sitting is a way of just reminding us, affirming us of that repeatedly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like your, I'm sorry, I missed your talk this morning. Sounds like it was pretty interesting, but yeah, this idea of giving, you know, and just giving. We commonly act with intention, right? We act with the intention to give something for, maybe we want to make the other person feel good. Maybe we want to feel good giving to the other person. But there's an agent behind that action, acting with an intent. And as we've heard before, Buddhas don't act with intent, right? So it's just the action, just the moment showing up, acting out of wholeness, which doesn't look a specific way. If we have an intention, you know, with an outcome, then we're not acting out of wholeness. Sorry, I went off the beam a little bit there. Is that, yeah.
Just a comment.
Yeah, completely in line with I think this talk today, for sure. Anything else? Thank you.
Very good.